can we have the live stream and recording to start, please? Can you confirm that we're on? Okay, thank you. The council is streaming this meeting live on the Hertfordshire Council YouTube channel and also making a recording. The recording will be available via the council's website shortly after the meeting has concluded. Other attendees are permitted to film, photograph and record our public meeting, providing that it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. If you do not wish to be filmed or photographed, please identify yourself so that anyone who attends to record the meeting can be made aware. Is everyone happy to be recorded?
Yes.
Right, okay, thank you. Right. We have every member of the committee actually physically here today. So I will just actually welcome them. As this is a new committee, I'm going to introduce the committee members for anyone that is actually zooming in today. My name is Lewis Stark and I am the chair of the committee. On my right is Councillor Trish Marsh, who is the vice chair, and Councillor Lisa Swigglehurst, Councillor Carol Gandy, and Councillor Jenny Hewitt, Councillor Yolanda Watson, and Councillor William Wilden. On my left, we have the Scrutiny Officer, Michael Carr, and zooming in, we have the clerk to the committee, Steve Tucker, and you're all very welcome. We also have in the room today, Councillor David Hitchner, leader of the council, and you're welcome, Councillor Hitchner. We also have Councillor Summers, who is here as an observer, and you're welcome too, Councillor Summers, and nice to see you. On Zoom, we have Councillor Harvey, who is cabinet member for Finance, Corporate Services and Planning. And we have Victor Joy, who is head of Waste Transformation and the Wetlands. Do we have any other officers present? I don't think so. Okay, thank you. Right. Have we any apologies for absence? The only one I've got is from Councillor Challenge, the cabinet member for Economy and Environment, who rejected she can't be here with us today. I don't think we've got anyone else, have we? No. No, Steve? No. Okay. So we don't need any name substitutes since all the council members are here. Declarations of interest. I've agreed with legal that all we have to declare today is whether we have any additional interest beyond that we've actually declared in the form that gets published on the HCC website. The reason why I did that was because environment and sustainability is such a wide topic. All of us will have so many extensive connections with environment groups, both nationally and locally. Councillor Swindler.
Thank you. Just to note really that I chair the Nutrient Management Board.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's fine. I think
Louis, just to say that I'm a member of the Citizen Science Group.
Yes, that's useful to know. But as I said, unless it's beyond what we've already got, that's fine. I don't think we need any dispensation on that. Right. Questions from members of the public? We have not received any questions from members of the public today. Questions from elected members? We've not received any questions from elected members today. So we will now then go on to the three substantive items, starting with item 6, which is the role and objectives of this particular scrutiny committee. I know, Scrutiny Officer, you're going to present them, but can I just add for those who are not being party to the Rethinking Governance Initiative in the Council, that we now have a Scrutiny Management Board sitting above each of the scrutiny committees in operation, including ourselves, and they are actually developing an evaluation framework so that we can judge how effective scrutiny has been this year up March before we have elections next year. But over to you, Scrutiny Officer, to present them.
Thank you, Chair. So, as Chair indicated, the Scrutiny Management Board has overarching strategic management of the scrutiny function, and it met on the 16th of June and agreed its own objectives And it was agreed in principle that each of the scrutiny committees would agree some overarching scrutiny objectives. That is reflected of the scrutiny process, its statutory function, its constitutional function, and process and the development that's going on in the scrutiny process, the scrutiny function itself. There are outlined in here some 12 standard overarching objectives. Objective for producing scrutiny reports, objectives for making recommendations in the committee, because that's a key function of scrutiny committees and how we do that. Objectives for getting a clear effective response so that we can know what the decisions are and the actions that are actually going to happen. Objectives for holding the executive to account, and again, another key strategic accountability or critical scrutiny. And aligned to that, questioning objectives of questioning in committee. So it's thinking about improving the way that committees put questions either to hold the executive to account or in line with policy development, looking for evidence. So just being clear about it, setting ourselves some objectives around that. Also, scrutiny of work planning. We've already got an agenda item today on the scrutiny work program. We've had a process where we've been looking at potential items and prioritising those. So we go along that course. Also, objectives for how we undertake scrutiny task and finish groups and quality of those. And lastly, but not least, objective on scrutiny and the public and the way in which the scrutiny committees champion and represent the public and involve the public in proceedings. So they're overarching objectives, and under that there will be more detail about how each committee wants to execute that, and that's something that it's just setting that framework for clarity for the public, members, and everybody about what we aim to achieve at the rest of the municipal year.
Thank you, Scrutiny Officer. Have we got any comments on that from members?
I'd like to know that when committee produce reports, what sort of officer help we have in doing so.
I think that is one of the developmental objectives, and so that is something we will consider. Certainly, I'm here to assist all of those scrutiny functions, but of course the way in which that may be delivered, I think there's different ways we can approach it. So there's ways in which we can involve departments, because they also assist the committees in advising the committee and helping them draw up reports. There's also got the clerking functions, democratic services function, who also assists in that, and also, as I say, I'm part of that team. But the precise way we go about it, what's most effective, that's up to the committee to consider going forward, I think. So that's one of those things that's why we've got the objective to think about how's the best way to deliver that.
Are you happy, Councillor Hewitt, for that answer, please?
Well, it just sounds like it's a work in progress. Is that correct?
I would say that Herefordshire already has some reports that it produces through the scrutiny function, and there may be some good practice in there. So we might want to look at what we're already doing, so it's not necessarily work in progress, but it is something we've set ourselves to think about. Is this the most effective way that we're going to do this? And it might well be we can draw on existing practice. That is the most effective way to do it. Or it might be we might want to tweak that or change that, or that's something to So the work in progress is about how we're delivering those strategic overall objectives, how we're delivering them, making sure it's the best way we can do it. That's it.
I think at this time, since we are a new committee and it's a new governance structure, that what we're trying to do is bring a systematic approach to the way that we evaluate the effectiveness of scrutiny. Because all of us have had issues about it in the past in various areas of the council, yes. I smile there. So bringing a systematic approach to it means we will learn as we go through the year as to how effective this is. But for today, this framework I think is a good starting point. And the important thing is it's roughly the same framework that's going to apply across all the scrutiny committees. So we will then be able to compare how each of us is doing and then decide how effective we've been and whether that's been down to the subject area, because that could be a problem. And I'm thinking of one particular subject at the moment, or whether that is down to the way that we've actually been able to perform our tasks, including having papers available and having officers, what you said. So having said that, I think I should ask, Councillor Gandhi.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, the one concern I would have is we've obviously now, and we have debated this before, but it doesn't harm from repeating it. We have now got 4 scrutiny committees, and therefore we will have more task and finish groups or spotlight reviews or whatever. And it's really about how the authority manages to support those task and finish groups and those spotlight reviews adequately, which has always been a bit of a struggle for officers. And we've always in the past been limited on the number of task and finish we can have in any particular financial year. And I recognise that, and I'm sure that will continue. We need to bear that in mind. But I do think we need to try to have some stability with regards to officers supporting our task and finish, who we know and we relate to and we can have honest conversations with, but also we have to make sure going forward that all officers in the council recognise the importance of task and finish and scrutiny and take it seriously, and when asked to appear at a scrutiny meeting or a task and finish, do so and are open with us about what the issues are regarding the subject we're discussing.
Yes. Just, sorry. Watson.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. It's just coming back on, as the Vice Chair of the Strategic Management Board, the Scrutiny Management Board, is that I just want to say is that when Christy Bolton, the Chair, and I met with Paul Walker and the monitoring officers, that there is a commitment, and I think that we have to recognise this as a journey. It's not going to be perfect from the outset, but I think that we're putting things in place, and I reflect what you say, actually, Chair, is that the 4 will, reflect as well as into the strategic Scrutiny Management Board, and I think, this is an exciting journey for Hereford Council, and I think that we're really putting scrutiny into the heart of what we're doing. So I welcome it.
Just to support Councillor Gandhi, I did raise the issue at full council when we were talking about rethinking governance, that to the leader and to the chief executive that we have to take this seriously. And I would like the clerk hopefully to reflect what Councillor Gandhi said in the minutes, please. Because I accept what you say, Councillor Watson, I think we have to keep getting that message across. That if we don't get the resources to support, and it's 5 committees now, because the SNB will have its own topics to discuss. If we don't get that support, along with the support for the add-ons in terms of TNFs and spotlights, it doesn't matter how systematic we are in our variation of scrutiny. Scrutiny will not deliver without that support. And I would certainly like that recorded in the minutes. Having had that debate, are we ready to vote on this now? Could I have a proposal, please? Councillor Swingers and a seconder, Councillor Marsh. All those in favour? Excellent. That's our very first item on the scrutiny committee under my chair, and it's gone through successfully. So if I'm going to have a performance review at the end of the year, I want that.
Don't get above your station.
That's always a problem, yes. I just want to ask the scrutiny officer whether should we discuss the work plan before we discuss the next item? Given what's been going on.
Well, I think that's a matter for the committee to determine. I don't see necessarily why.
We need to do that
Because there may be matters that you wish to add to your voting vote now.
Okay, it's just that I should say to committee members, we did have a debate on this about whether we should have the work programme before item 7. So we'll move on to item 7, which is to look at options for policy development and operational response on the restoration of the River Wye. Can I just give some background to this item before we actually get into the debate on it? As you all know, the original water protection zone motion was mine at full council in January. So I'm delighted to see that the cabinet, rather than just taking note from an answer from the government, are actually pressing on. We're trying to find a response to the challenges being faced by our river system, and that's to be welcomed. I'm also pleased that this scrutiny committee has been set up, because I do think that in part the debate that followed on from the water protection zone motion, and also the concern that's been shown by all members about the River Wye system, has been reflected in the rethinking governance structure, where we have actually purposely created this committee to look at environment and sustainability issues. So I think that's welcome as well. However, there are some issues today around taking this item forward, and that's particularly around the fact that we haven't had papers on the proposed cabinet commission on this today. 5 days in advance, as would be normally the case, and therefore the members of the public who might have wanted to actually look at those papers and perhaps even comment on them in front of this scrutiny committee have not had that opportunity either. So what I would suggest is that we should have a general debate at this stage in committee, because I have 1 or 2 observations I want to make about the proposed commission that doesn't get into the detail of what the scope of the commission might be. So I'd still like to at least raise them in public. But I do think that the meat of the debate, perhaps, we should leave until our September meeting, once we have a clearer picture from the cabinet as to what the scope of the commission is going to be. Sorry, Councillor Nash.
Yes, I think it's important to say that this has been in quite an orderly process, that we were expecting to set up a task and finish group. We've got some people to serve on it, but we're delighted to say, I would think, that we're now being overtaken by the pace of events, and the cabinet will themselves be looking at this in more detail on Thursday. So I feel that this committee has already contributed to that momentum, and so that's something to be pleased about. I know we will have some discussion now, but we are going to return to this in subsequent meeting.
Yes, if I can start the debate rolling, I have two issues to raise in terms of the proposed cabinet commission, although I do commend the cabinet's initiative here. One is on buy-in, Leader, and one is on capacity. On buy-in, we are not the sole arbiter here, and we recognise that. And I know that we will do as much as we can within council to actually use the instruments that we have available within council to actually do what we can towards trying to improve the outcomes for the River Wye system. But there are a myriad of partners here. There are also the 2 governments in Cardiff and Westminster as well. And I really would like to understand, Leader, at this point, how we're going to ensure that even if we did come up with a structured plan for moving forward and with recommendations for moving forward, how are we going to get that buy-in so that the partners that we rely on, such as the Environment Agency and Natural Resources Wales, and the 2 governments, because it could be funding issues as well, how, if we do take forward this commission, that buy-in is going to be achieved. That's my first issue.
Can I respond to that?
Yes.
Louis? I think a lot of it is about fact gathering. So we're in a society where, you know, science, things are science-based, the information, if we can get the information and get some proof, then it's a lot easier to get buy-in to these things. So I think part of the function of this group is actually to be gathering the facts. That's going to be very challenging because of the limited time available, the limited money available. And then ensuring those facts are kind of accepted pretty universally. There will be always people probably who will disagree, but we need to get the information and get the facts out there, and perhaps have the opportunity to present those facts to the farming community, to the ecologists, to the agri people, so they have an opportunity to challenge if they want to. So that it should be a fairly open forum to get people to actually express their views and opinions and get it all out there, rather than people in the background niggling away and saying that, you know, I think at the moment there isn't really the fact base for the whole thing. I talk to farmers, I talk to environmentalists, and I pick up one argument from a farmer and I present that to the environmentalist who then replies, and then I go back to the farmer and tell them, and they have a reply to that. Well, I think this is an opportunity to get all the people in the room to I mean, it's a big goal, but I think we have to try to do it, because I think, you know, to answer your question, how are we going to get people on board with this? We have to get everybody in the room to be agreeing or accepting the facts as they are.
Does any member want to come back on that? Councillor Hewitt?
I'd like to make a suggestion. So we're the recipient of waters that come down from a neighbouring authority, and a neighbouring authority to us is recipient of waters that come down from us. We might not be able to get both those neighbouring authorities to join in a task and finish group or in the commission, but I would recommend that that in order to pull NRW and EA together to have one policy for the whole river, that we engage with or work in or suggest we try and work in parallel with at least Monmouthshire, so that we have more weight behind our voice. Anyway, that's my suggestion.
Councillor Hitchner?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hewitt. We are very well connected and well engaged both now with Monmouthshire and with Powys, and certainly from a political perspective, I think there is a real will from a local authority perspective to find solutions. And I think the officer corps obviously follows on from that. So I think there is a real opportunity. The time is right. We've got administrations in both Monmouthshire and Powys who I think we can work very well and very strongly with. So I think there is a real opportunity. Quite how the chair of the commission actually engages with those people, I think that's probably an interesting thing, maybe in terms of reference, and for that person to work out how to do it, whether they should actually be sort of, if there's a sort of a kind of inquiry that we actually get the politicians from both Powys and Monmouthshire to come along. Should they be members of the commission? I'd be perhaps interested to know what you as the scrutiny committee think would be appropriate. How much broader it can be. I think in the draft there's a reference to the commission having sort of voting rights and that kind of thing. Well, I'm not sure it's quite going to be like that, but whether you want to recommend that we should be asking people from those councils to actually join on in the commission, that might be something which we should be seriously looking at.
Can I come back, please?
Yes. Yes.
So I'd really like to know, because I don't know whether any of us know, what the full council vote for a water protection zone, how it was received in Monmouth and Powys. Does anybody know that, or whether there was any discussion amongst those authorities?
I think Rachel Joy is probably the most likely to be able to provide some input on that.
I've had
I've gone totally off script.
I've had discussions with colleagues in Powys, so at an officer level they are well aware of our desire for a water protection zone. Of course, any water protection zone in Wales would be a matter for Welsh government and not English government. So again, that points to the complexity. But in terms of buy-in, at an officer level, there have been regular discussions since January about the potential for a commission, regular discussions with Natural England, the Environment Agency and Natural Resources Wales about what scope that might include, what it might not include. So we are working with our partners to try and get the buy-in we need. And actually, if we go back to one of the core purposes of the local authority is to provide community leadership and to convene public services in their place. So there is an important role for the council in actually shaping this, gathering evidence, supporting the work of the Nutrient Management Board, are all important parts of the work of the council on this. So we'll continue to engage with colleagues in other authorities and the national regulators. And at the end of the day, I would make clear we don't seek this. We don't push this or suggest this, but if the evidence is there, there is always now the Office of Environmental Protection who have a role in these matters as well. So we hope for persuasion, and we will obviously gather evidence to try and persuade, but there are further places and further mechanisms to consider beyond that these days. I'll stop at that point.
Councillor Swinworth, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just prior to the council's vote, the Nutrient Management Board also voted on the water protection zone, and although that was not unanimous, having nay votes from NFU and CLA, but the majority view was that the WPZ was something that we should be requesting, and as a result of that, obviously that loops back via NRW to Welsh Government. The Welsh Government response was also in the negative. Taking, I think, a broadly similar line. So that's probably what we can expect, to be fair. I think it might be useful at this stage to start to consider, as it were, the potential task and finish group from here. And actually what we try and look at is a triangulated terms of reference for the two of them, so that we're at this stage, we're already thinking, what's that group doing and what's that group doing? Because I think there's a potential for one of the groups, and this is the one we're talking about today, to become all-encompassing, and it squeezes out any other potential. Whereas it seems to me the opportunity here is to try to devise the work for one group that is specifically great for them to do, where they are well placed to do that particular thing, and the other group to do a different thing. So it seems to me the Cabinet Commission is uniquely placed, well placed, to look at actions, particularly within a local authority gift and purview, things that can actually happen, be done, be looked at, be taken forward, have a result, and that would be, really worthwhile. I think sort of trying to use the local authority to fact find and understand the issue and admire the problem a little bit more, when there's already a fantabulous amount of work out there, research, academic and scientific. We don't need to kind of do that again. We can just look at what's already there. We already know all this stuff. There are things that we are still learning, but that work is ongoing with Wales Foundation and others. So Councillor Hewitt is referring to the phosphate, phyces phosphorus conundrum. So yeah, it's finding what is exactly the good fit here. The bespoke fit for the Cabinet Commission, the Task and Finish group, where they're not duplicating, but they're complementing, and it's something to do with not being overly, massive in the concept and scope of either of the groups.
Okay. I know you want to come back, Councillor Candy, and I think Councillor, you're right. But I'll take Councillor Hitchner first in order to answer Councillor Swingle.
Yeah. Thank you, Chad. It's great to hear from Alyssa talking about how we're going to work together with the Nutrient Management Board. That's something which is very, very important. I just wanted to go back a little bit in the history of how we've ended up where we have now. Because initially we were thinking we would have a commission and get a third party to chair this commission, which would then keep the independence. It would help the buy-in because that you would just be seen as independent from everything. But we couldn't find a chair who was willing to take on the role. I think part of it was because it was just too much of a political hot potato. So what we've now done is we said, okay, it is a political hot potato. So let's take it into the political domain and let's acknowledge it's political. So this commission, because it's a cabinet commission, it is political, and it's not political in terms of party divide, because the whole council are united in things like the WPZ. So it's all of us working together, but it's putting it in the political domain. So I suppose I'm thinking that, yes, we all want things to be fact-based, but at the end of the day, because it's political, we can add extra weight to it. We can form opinions much more readily, I think, than if it's purely an independent third party who's trying to find a way through things. We want to try to find a way through, but it is political. I think that probably makes it slightly different from the Nutrient Management Board, and might also make it different from the Scrutiny Committee. I think we can take it. We want to take as a council a political lead on this and push it politically.
Okay, I'll come back to that. Councillor Gandhi?
Yeah, I've looked at the governance arrangements on this, and I'm a little confused. On point 5, it says offer the Herefordshire Council Environmental Audit and Scrutiny Committee the opportunity to review the terms of reference.
Yes.
That doesn't exist. There's no such thing. We are not the Environmental Audit and Scrutiny Committee. So I'm assuming that's us,
That is us.
but we are not that. We are the Sustainability and Scrutiny Committee. But then underneath, it says offer the Herefordshire Council Environmental Audit and Scrutiny Commission the opportunity to consider and comment on its recommendations prior to Cabinet. Is that us? And should be committee, not commission, or is that the commission? And if it's not us at all, where do we, if we're going to do a task and finish, where do we fit in with feeding our information? Do we feed it into the cabinet, or do we feed it in to the commission?
Chair, could I respond to that? I'm going to hold my hand up.
Just before you do, I should say we're not getting into the detailed debate today about the TORs, because we.
No, I understand that, but I don't know whether we've got
we need
any.
to clarify
I don't know
that
whether
point.
we've got any input on if we're going to do a TNF, or whether if we're not, it doesn't matter. But if we are, where our input goes,
Okay.
and I don't understand what either of these committees are, and one is a commission anyway.
Okay.
Chair, I do apologise, Councillor. I do apologise. That is my haste to get the terms of reference together. They both refer to your committee.
Right. So we do have an opportunity to consider the progress prior to Cabinet and the final reports, and presumably comment on that, not just consider.
The report will come with to consider and comment.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Is that fine, Councillor Gandhi?
Yeah.
Although we're not debating the detail today, also, because it hasn't gone
No.
down the TORs.
But we need to get the governance.
Yeah, but we need to get the governance arrangement right. And under the work programme, I think we will touch upon the TNF, because I do think we need to have at least some debate on that today. Councillor Wilder?
Thank you, Chair. Can I just say that this is the first of these meetings of our ESSC, Environment and Sustainability Scrutiny Committee, and I'm really happy that this has been formed, and I think everyone who's listening to this will agree that it's absolutely important that this committee looks at the issues such as this, Because at the moment, the River Wye, the health of the River Wye does seem to be the most important thing that we need to start looking at.
And the lug.
All the rivers in the country, and I hope that just by us highlighting this and pushing towards government doing things about the Wye and the Lug and all our rivers, they will also be helping to improve the health of all the rivers nationwide. And so I'm really happy to hear what Councillor Hitchner has just said, that the Cabinet will be strongly looking at this and aiming to convince the government to really change its ways and to really start looking at ways to improve the health of all our rivers. So that's the main thing. And I know we can't get into any details now, but I'm happy that we're just doing this and that the Cabinet is going to be looking at this, because I think they are going to add a huge amount more strength to any recommendations that are made and perhaps speed the whole process up as well.
Okay. Thank you for those words of positivity, Councillor Allen. Sorry, Councillor Swindles.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I'd be quite interested to hear, if possible, from Councillor Hitchner as to what he sees as the difference and the different roles between the proposed Cabinet Commission and the proposed Scrutiny Task and Finish, and how he thinks they might work together and in a complementary way, you know, and be as specific as possible. And the other thing I was going to say is that we've spoken earlier about relationships with Paris and Monmouthshire. And there's definitely a conversation that I think would be very useful for the Cabinet Commission to have, which is about what I call being a good neighbour. So where we have an upstream potential to assist Monmouthshire, and particularly Monmouth has got a real problem because they don't have any upstream from Monmouth, that we can help them, we can turn to Paris to help us, you know, because we have to actually see the river as a system, as a catchment, instead of just, you know, this is our bit, this is your bit, because that is not working. And that's a conversation I think we might really usefully have, or the Commission might usefully have. And that's what I mean about trying to find these things that are within our purview, within our gift, and that would make a difference.
Councillor
Thank you, Councillor Swinglehurst. What's the difference between the Task and Finish Group and the Commission? Well, I suppose part of the discussion today is to explore how we can actually not duplicate. And so ideas which you might have, which we can incorporate in our commission, we want to be doing that, and then to find out what the work of the Task and Finish Group, or I think we are enthusiastic for this group to monitor the work that we are doing. So I think as we're going through the process with our group, then you may want that group to report back to you from time to time to explain where things are, and then you can actually help us to make sure that the proper result is delivered. And Councillor, you're mentioning about the rivers. It is interesting, isn't it, that the pollution potentially starts in Wales, comes through Herefordshire, and then goes back into Wales. So the Welsh are at both ends. We're the sort of sandwich in the middle. They all do have problems. I think now Monmouthshire have limitations on the buildings which they can put up in the development they can do in Monmouthshire. We have the same problem. Paris, I think, is sort of there as well. What staggers me is this is not more of a national issue. You know, what are the government doing about it? There are 3 counties which are affected, but of course we're not huge. We're what 190,000. Paris is about the same, and Monmouth. So you know, the 3 counties, a huge area, but compared to the size of London, we're a pimple.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I'll take Councillor Hewitt, then Councillor Marsh.
So I don't know whether this is a useful suggestion, but your comment about our work would be to monitor what you're doing and for us to add additional things in. But I wondered whether it might be useful for us to say, we want to take this item from your agenda and run with it on your behalf. Or is that not a time to do that now, Michael? What do you think? Is that a question for Michael or a question for Louis? I don't know.
Well, I think that's probably a detailed point that we would have to
Is it?
wait until we discuss the TORs once they've been agreed with the
Okay.
cabinet in September.
Okay.
But it's a very good point, because one of the things that we might be able to do as a task and finish group is that forensic work that the commission might not be able to do, if that's possible, where we can actually do some of the more detailed data gathering or something along those lines. Councillor Springhouse?
I'm actually,
Oh, sorry, no, it's Councillor.
Sorry, Councillor.
Councillor Marshall,
Yeah,
sorry.
and just to say, we also need to include Gloucestershire and the Forest of Dean, who have
Yeah.
done quite a lot of extensive scrutiny work themselves and were somewhat handicapped by having very little idea of the situation in Herefordshire. So I do hope that they will be included in our satellite, and also the whole good neighbour thing of which councillors from the Perth speaks. I personally think that we won't be able to effectively decide until we know what the Cabinet Commission are going to do. I don't think it's worth us trying to run after you. I think we need to find that complementary space that Councillor Swigglehurst was speaking of. And I also think we need to be careful, because having just gone through doing a task and finish groups on the IPU and human health impact, it was made very clear to us by a number of things, including Councillor Chinman's experience of much more rigorous processes at national level, is that we don't honestly have the resource to do a lot of heavy scientific work here unless we can get someone out with the council. It's not, it just won't work to expect either the members or our officers to be able to, Councillor Chinman explained that you would have 8 scientific officers for a year. That isn't going to happen here. So while science is very important, we need to be very careful before we leap into something about whether we can practically deliver it. So I'm all in favour of the complementary space. And I think in September, when we come back, we will be a lot clearer about what might be a good place that would help move the whole thing forward and be complementary.
Right, thank you, Councillor Marsh. Councillor Swinhouse?
Thank you, Chair. So for what it's worth, I think that the task and finish can operate in a different space, in a complementary space. I'm not entirely enthused with the idea of it simply being there to mirror back to the Cabinet Commission, what the Cabinet Commission is doing. That seems very inward looking, and it would reduce the chances of progression. We would be going around in endless little cycles of looking at what we're doing. So I want to go the other way and think, I also think that horizon scanning is a really useful thing to do, to look outwards. And that might be something that Task and Finish could do that is very different. Look at what else is going on out there, look outwards, look forwards, look at emerging government thinking, and so work perhaps with the Cabinet Commission in a sort of leapfrogging pattern where the Task and Finish is horizon scanning, pioneering, and then feeding back something, fighting, oh, that's good, and be able to feed that back and say, this is an action you might want to look at. So there's a thinking and a doing, because the Task and Finish is not cannot do really, but it can think. And that might be a very useful relationship. Also gap analysis, and that sort of area, and maybe identifying or helping to identify some of the regulatory gapping. So there is actually sort of very clear reasons why there is a difference of approach in Wales. It's because there's a regulatory gapping, and there is also regulatory gapping on the English side, and we need to understand that and then focus and say, well, this is what the gap is. Can we fix that? Can we solve that?
That's interesting, Councillor Swinhouse. It goes back to a debate we had in the Task and Finish group on the climate emergency in some respect.
Yeah.
We were thinking of that think tank,
Yeah, we will.
if you remember, and horizon engagement and gap analysis then. So here you've got my vote as chair. I'm conscious that
Can I
it may
just-
be slightly.
Can I just agree with what Councillor Swingle has said, and then I think possibly Councillor Hewitt was nodding in agreement. I wouldn't want to sit on a task and finish that is just monitoring what the Commission is doing. You don't need a task and finish for that. You can do that by doing it through scrutiny. So you don't need to set up a task and finish group for that. That is a simple process. What we need to be doing is looking at what they are not looking at, and but that needs to be looked at, and being able to offer them some of the, as Councillor Swingle said, some of the ideas about where we think there are the gaps and where we think the legislation is coming through or not coming through, where we can put pressure on. But I just to sit and monitor what's coming from Commission, I don't see that as being a task and finish responsibility.
Yes, I agree, we can do that in this scrutiny committee itself. Right. I know we're not going to come to a decision on the task and finish group itself in terms of what it might do today. We do have a membership already agreed, so we do have to give them some clarity, of course. And I think the clarity we can give them is that we will definitely come to a decision in September on the task and finish group. We agree that to committee, but I think it's only fair. We are going into recess anyway, so there wouldn't be a great deal we can do. But I certainly do think we need to come to a conclusion on the task and finish group and whether we're going to have one in this area. For those elected members, 3 of whom are here, and I'm very grateful for them having volunteered, so that they know that this is either going to happen or not, because they may have other pressures on them to do other things. So we will definitely come to that decision in September. Councillor Hewitt?
Can I just ask Councillor Hitchener, because we're going to enter a period of purdah in, I don't know when it begins, does it begin in April or it begins in April, doesn't it?
March.
March,
Beginning
even.
March, yeah.
March, end of March, is it middle?
Beginning, yeah, I think.
Is it almost?
Right, well, maybe that's 6 weeks.
27,
6 weeks to
6
May
weeks.
the 4th. 6 weeks to
27th
May the
March?
4th.
27th of March.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just aware that, you know, there's such urgency to this issue, and, you know, it's quite a broad spectrum of things that we can undertake. And I just think we ought to look, yes, at all the wider things, but at what we can do and to put that in place before that action, what we as a local authority can do. So what I'm most interested in is the current planning policy framework, what we can do now to actually set that before we enter into another situation where somebody else might think totally differently. So I would like that to go to the top of your agenda and not be on number 9.
Councillor Hitchner?
Yes, a few reflections on that. First of all, we're working together in such a way and across party in the hope that if there is a change in the administration in the next election, things will carry on.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that's really important. We are united, I think, as a council. The resolution is so I'm not too concerned about that element. It's only 6 months we're going to have to work on this, so it's phenomenally difficult to produce a result in the 6 months. But we are up for that task, and we'll do our very best to do something which means that it needs to be as simple as possible and not overly complicated, not too many issues. We do need to focus on them. But the specific issue about the planning document, I would have to defer to Councillor Harvey, who is much closer, and she is also on the screen and has been remarkably silent so far. So through the chair, whether Councillor Harvey would be allowed to.
Councillor Harvey, do you want to comment?
Yeah, I'd just like to assure committee members that the sequencing of the objectives are not in a priority order. They're simply listing the things that the Commission needs to be covering. We also have a notice of motion which is coming to our full council on Friday, which mentions how important it is that we make sure that we are wielding all the influence and powers under planning legislation that are available to us in helping to resolve this situation. And I'm wholly in agreement and in support of doing that. And hopeful that we can make sure as we go through the update of the local plan, which is underway at the moment, that we can be building any additional safeguards and wording into our policies to ensure that we're doing everything that we can, and that we're communicating that to all of the development sectors that use our planning policy framework. So yes, we're intending to do that, but we're also recognising that it may be helpful to make sure that we're connected up appropriately with all the stakeholder groups, and that we're providing and identifying the information that might be missing, either that we can supply, or that we can help to organise in order to provide to the other stakeholder boards, and indeed also the stakeholder group that our local MPs have recently set up in order to put a 5-year plan together. So I think the important thing is that we all work together in a constructive and additive way. Inevitably, to do that, there needs to be a little bit of overlap, but not so much overlap that we're wasting time or we're treading on one another's toes. And I think it's going to be important to get that overlap balance correct. And the overlap may need to be slightly different with different groups and different stakeholder forums. And I think that's all to be worked through.
Do you want to come back, Councillor Hewitt?
Well, as usual, I feel a bit dumb here because I don't understand what you mean by the overlap. So it would be really helpful if you could just explain, if that's okay, Councillor Hartley, what you mean.
Well, there may be some overlap between the issues that the Nutrient Management Board is dealing with, and the work that the Commission can undertake to provide information into the Nutrient Management Board from the Council's end of things. There may be a slightly different overlap with the work that the MPs 5-year plan group want to undertake, and we can provide support and an input to that as appropriate. I think there's a deadline of mid-September for identifying what actions are currently underway across the stakeholder group that meeting is going to be coming back to. And then as far as the local plan's concerned, we've got some supplementary planning documents that are in draft and shortly going to public consultation, including one on intensive forms of agriculture. We're also going to be working on putting the updated policies together. So there may be some overlap with work that's going on the local plan. Does that help?
That's much clearer, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. I think we should move on to my second issue here, which I think is quite important, which is capacity leader. I know you decided to set up a carbon commission. I wonder if at any stage you thought of full council creating a subcommittee to actually look at this issue. My thoughts here are that draws in a much wider political representation across the council rather than just carbon itself. And I do notice, Leader, that you are actually expecting half the cabinet to sit in this commission. Well, given all the challenges that 8 of you already face, I would certainly like to have some reassurance that you think you have the capacity to do this, and why you didn't think a subcommittee of the full council might not be on appropriate vehicle.
Chairman, on the numbers, yes, there's a suggestion in the draft of 3 cabinet members. I'm not sure that's actually appropriate. It may be less than that. Why not full council? I think we feel as an administration that we want to take some responsibility and take it ourselves to move it forward. And I think we're more likely to produce a result by having a cabinet member running it and then reporting to cabinet. It'll be shorter communication. The council only meets 5 times a year or something like that. So I think if your question is kind of about, the one on capacity is about what the cabinet can do. But the other issue, I think, in capacity is what actually officers can actually provide and work on, and that's a significant issue because officers are already stretched, but we just need to work that through.
So when you set up this programme, how are you going to assure us that you're going to be able to deliver it?
Well, we will do our best through the terms of reference, have the right people involved. It's a challenge, but we're up for the challenge. There's no absolute promise that we can do it within the time, but it's an urgent issue, and we think this is the best way of addressing it.
Well, I do think this, okay, Councillor Gandhi, say something.
Yeah, I can understand as a politician why the cabinet wants to have ownership of this and doesn't want the rest of the council to have ownership of it. It wants to be a cabinet ownership. And obviously that means an administration ownership, but it's more than an administration ownership, it's a cabinet ownership. But I do think that is a very, and Councillor Hitchner has made it clear this is a political thing. But this isn't a political thing with a small p, this is a political thing with a big P. And my view is if you are serious about wanting to set up a commission to look at what is a very complex issue, there are people on the council, and I'm not one of them, but there are people on the council who have a great deal of knowledge, more knowledge than a lot of people who serve on the cabinet. And I think therefore you are excluding, I mean, it does say there, it talks about non-members, but it's talking about experts. Now I don't think we would class our councillors as experts, but they are extremely knowledgeable. So you are excluding a group of people, 2 or 3 people who have a lot more knowledge about the problem we've got here than can be found within the cabinet. And I think this is a very short-sighted way of doing it. As a politician, I can see why it's being done, and probably if I was in their position, I probably would have done exactly the same thing. But if you're really serious about wanting to sort the problem out, then what you want at that table are the councillors who are best able to deal with it, not the people who are your cabinet and your friends, your cosy friends.
Councillor here. Oh, sorry. I'll take Councillor Marsh first.
Okay.
Yes, mindful, Councillor Hitchner, of your point about hoping to keep cross-party consensus and build that if necessary. Anyway, build for that to continue beyond next May. Yes, I do wonder if you could say how you do plan to keep the wider councillor membership on board, because that does seem to me important to keep that momentum and agreement and build it, which I think is, I mean, it's to me very good news that the MPs are now taking action, and that obviously sends a clear message to Conservatives. But yes, it'd be useful if you could say how you will be keeping the wider membership on board to help build that unanimous momentum.
I suppose part of that debate is engaging with you now, the scrutiny committee appointed by the full council. But perhaps we just take that one away as a kind of, if you like, a recommendation or a request that we consider the membership of the committee and whether there are people within the council who we can draw on. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we will take that away as a recommendation. My concern is, as Councillor Gandhi has said, is to utilise the talent we have within the full council as much as possible, because all of us do feel very strongly about the need to do something for our river systems. And it's not a matter of party politics, it's a matter of trying to garner that enthusiasm, that support, and trying to drive that forward as effectively as possible towards an outcome for the river that we all want. Councillor Hewitt, I think you wanted to make
I just want to really endorse what both Councillor Gandhi and Councillor Marsh and Councillor Stark have just said. You know, there are people who've been living in the county a very long time, whose hearts are breaking at the state of the River Wye, and it isn't because they're under a particular party.
That's fine. I don't have any other issues to raise in a general sense at this point. Does anyone have any more general issues to raise? Oh, John.
Sorry, just to say, Councillor Harvey's got a hand up.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Harvey, sorry. I didn't see that.
Yeah, I'd just like to try and assure everybody that the point about building the commission is to get the right people round the table, whoever they are. So as far as Councillor Hitchener and I and the cabinet are concerned, we're not looking to, you know, keep this tight to cabinet. We're looking to accept responsibility for this. Not enough has been done on this for a long time. And now we've got more thumbs than pie. So what we're all keen that we do here is that we get the right mix of people involved in doing this, and recognising that there is a lot of concern, but what we need are people with the capabilities and the competence to be able to actually contribute constructively. And concern does not necessarily equal capability or competence, but it must be recognised because there's passion with it. So lots of people are concerned. Some of those concerned people may also have the capability and competence to actually help us out here. And very many more people, hopefully, will be supporting us because they are concerned, but don't know what to do, but just want somebody somewhere to do something. And what we're keen to do is, Councillor Gandhi, not make this a big P issue, but recognise that while we are the administration, we do actually have responsibility for doing something. And to the extent that we're responsible for what the council does, we're accepting that responsibility, but we're not reserving it exclusively to ourselves, hence the commission.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. That's my two general issues that have been tabled today. We're not going to discuss the QRs in detail as we've agreed with the committee, because we're going to defer that to the September meeting. And by that time, we will have the cabinet decision this Thursday. We will probably have the leader coming back to us with draft QRs for us to actually look at. We will also have the motion on Friday from Councillors Fagan and Hewitt. I think it's an excellent motion, which in a way actually sets down some of the foundation that we want for the commission. So aside from those general issues that I've raised, Does anyone on the committee have any other general issues they want to raise at this stage? No. We have been talking about perhaps having a couple of recommendations from that. Clark, have you come up with any recommendations that you've thought to do, and I can give you the right.
So I think the main one, Chair, was just that the leader will look at the membership and whether that incorporates other members of the council that may have particular knowledge or talent that they can add to sitting on that.
The one I'm conscious of is the buy-in one. I mean, I'm very conscious of that. I know we're doing this. I know it's to our credit that we're leading on it, but we do have to ensure we get that buy-in. So I think as a recommendation, we should actually ask the executive to reassure us that they will, as part of this work going forward with the commission, drive forward that buy-in from the partners and from the two governments that we need. So I would like that as a recommendation for our part. We can capture that as well. Because I don't want to lose that point, because we have got a number of parties involved here, and up to now, whether we like it or not, we haven't come up with a solution. We've done a lot of work, we've done a lot of good work. There are initiatives going on. There's initiatives going on through the Nutrient Management Board and with that. Initiatives going on with farmers, initiatives going on in various sectors. But there's no overall, as our local MP would say, in my constituency, a strategic plan. And I think I'm just concerned we get that buy-in, so we have everyone driving forward. Councillor Watson.
Yeah, sorry to be naive here, but I'm just wondering, how can we ask buy-in from strategic partners where we have no ownership over them? All that we can do is make recommendations and point it out. But I'm very uncomfortable to ask for buy-in because I just don't see that as part of our role. We're all in our role. Under our terms of reference, we can, work with strategic partners and, but point out things. But I just think that what you're asking, Lou, is
too much.
I think it's outside the remit of this scrutiny. That's my personal opinion.
I sort of agree with both. I don't think we can. I mean, I think we just have to be more specific about who strategic partners are, because in terms of local authorities, we have local authorities around us. And I think if we're going to ask for buy-in, we need to ask for buy-in from our fellow local authorities, because that is part of our system. We can't, we can recommend to, the government agencies, NRW, EA, whoever else. But, under the JNCC, it's one river, and we are local authorities all around that river. So I think we have a remit for asking local authorities, and I agree with you.
Councillor Swingers?
Yes, I agree with the point that Councillor Hewitt has just made. Well, the other thing I was going to say, I was very struck the other day after the Royal Welsh Show at the First Minister's meeting, and he started the meeting really clearly, which was also was a short meeting, very hot there, saying he's not interested in everyone going over what the problem is, and he didn't want anyone in the room to make a suggestion that they themselves could not deliver. They only wanted to hear what you, on behalf of your organisation, could do. So it wasn't about everyone saying, well, they need to do this. And I think that's a really important, clear line of thought, that we have to, at least at the first place, examine what can we do and what horizontally other planning authorities can do, rather than saying, well, what the Environment Agency or NRW or whatever, because we have no purview over what the Environment Agency does. So that we can't talk to them. We do they're on the Nutrient Management Board, so which is a partnership board. So that's everyone in together bringing to the table what their organisation can do, and that's so we need to understand all these relationships and not sort of the proposed commission being the most recent group, as it were, to potentially come to the table, but it's not trying to have conversations that are already being had and they're having elsewhere.
I always like to be ambitious. I don't always like to be curtailed in my ambitions. Okay, Councillor Watson.
Yeah, and because I'm just going back to our terms of reference, and it says the scrutiny committees have the power to scrutinise the services provided by organisations outside the council. And so the objective 8, effective scrutiny, involvement of external organisations and partnerships in the scrutiny process. And rather than buy-in, we could actually scrutinise, what they are delivering, the services. So rather than ask for buy-in, why not scrutinise them?
Only if they're willing to be scrutinised, because we've got no power over them to actually call them in, and they might not attend. But the point's been taken by the chair, and I'm trying to get a committee view here. Leader, I'm looking to you. Would you find it useful for us to have a recommendation from this scrutiny committee about engaging with the partner local authorities on this particular issue? Or are you happy you have enough?
I'm happy to receive a recommendation, because it's in our mind anyway to be doing that. But there's no harm. Recommendation, I'm quite sure. Thank you, Chair.
I'll go back to the clerk then and to the supervisor. So we're looking at 2 recommendations then. One on, I think we were looking at the experts and the other partners that should be involved with the commission to take this work forward. And the second one is working with our partner local authorities and actually making sure that the work of the commission is effective. Yeah, can you read them out then? Please?
But Clarity, on behalf of the chair, what I have is that it be moved that it be recommended to Cabinet that the proposed Cabinet Phosphates Commission on Restoration of the River Wye, including its membership, councillors from across the council who have a particular knowledge in this subject matter, and that the Cabinet ensure that every effort is made to promote active participation from all of the key strategic partners in the work of the proposed commission.
Comments?
Sorry, was that all strategic partners? What's the last bit of?
All of the key strategic partners in the work of the proposed commission. So the commission has been proposed to Cabinet on Thursday.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the Cabinet Commission, not our work. Yeah, well, that they're working at a higher political level, so yes. But I think in terms of what we should do here, it should be, what we as a local authority can do, and what the local authorities around us can do. So, I think when we say key strategic partners, it's just, it could embrace so much, who I see as key strategic partners and who someone else sees. I think we have to be specific. So
Thanks for Watson.
Yeah, I think it's what Councillor Swinglehurst was saying earlier is about the gap analysis. It's actually, as we get, within, maybe we can raise this in September, but I think that once you start to map out the departments, I think then it will become clearer, and who knows what the future is for the task and finish group.
I'm not happy with strategic partner definition.
Is there an amendment to which key strategic partners we're talking about?
Yes.
Do we know? Are we recommending?
Local
So,
authority.
sorry, members, are you recommending any specific key strategic partners, or do you want to keep it as key strategic partners at this stage?
I thought Councillor Swinglehurst was suggesting initially that we actually engage with our neighbouring local authorities.
Local authorities.
Yeah, that's exactly what.
So after key strategic partners, including neighbouring local authorities.
I would take out the key strategic partners.
Yeah,
That's very subjective.
instead of key strategic partners, neighbouring local authorities.
Yes, I think that's what we need.
I mean, if we can't engage with them, we might as well go home.
We might as well give up.
So are we happy with those two recommendations? Do you want them read out again? So, could I have a proposal? Councillor Gandy, seconded, Councillor Hewitt, all those in favour? Thank you very much. We will now move on to the last item, item 8. Not least, of course, which is our work plan. And I'm going to ask the scrutiny officer to take us through the structure as it now stands. Thank you.
Chair. So, as members will know, on 20th of May, Council appointed new scrutiny committees, including this one, the Environment and Sustainability Scrutiny Committee, and subsequently, the committee have informally considered possible topics in consultation with the department and other members of the committee and the Centre for Government and Scrutiny, and undertaken a prioritisation of key issues that we might wish to consider during the year. These have now been mapped around the proposed meetings for the year. So all of the committees are proposed to have a baseline for meetings. So these have now been mapped in the table attached. The topics around relevant meetings at the optimum time of the year. That's the idea. And that's the plan that we have attached, and the committee is now asked to ratify and agree that.
Yes. Thank you, Scrutiny Officer. I thought we might go through the work plan row by row, just to make sure that we are happy with each entry. I think we probably will have to change the September one now, because of what's happened today, because we have had a full debate on the TURs and the Cabinet Commission. So if we start with the one in September, because we've already had our meeting today, the 21st of September. I should say that all these topics were discussed at the work planning session that we had on this committee, as well as connected communities. I'm not sure, Councillor Hewitt, whether you were there, but
No,
it has come out of discussions.
And I wasn't there either, but I'm quite happy with.
Yeah, so, and they've also been set against the priorities that the scrutiny officer came out with that fit with the county plan.
Yeah.
Are the performance or other risks involved that mean that we need to look at these areas as a scrutiny committee? Is there a general public interest here, which is quite key as well? So we have set each of these topics that came out of the work planning session against those priorities. And I do think, scrutiny officer, you did come back to all the council and committee members and said that you were happy with it overall as it's at the moment. It is a living document. So even if we do agree to move forward on this today, it doesn't mean that it's cast in stone. But the one thing I'm keen to try and get is the topic for the next meeting, so that we know when we come back from August exactly what we're going to discuss, and that officers have a clear sort of window of opportunity to provide papers on it. Sorry, Councillor Marsh.
Yeah, and just a very practical point about the September meeting, and asking really Councillor Harvey when the window would be in which it would be helpful for us to have a discussion, because if we can't have it in September, obviously we do want to have it at a time where it can feed constructively into work being done on the local plan.
Councillor Harvey.
Well, I think time ticks, doesn't it? I think it would be useful, I think, maybe to have it scheduled for September. The terms of reference should be solidified by then, and the options for useful scrutiny input can then be discussed.
Councillor Hewitt.
I just want to, talking about time ticking, The flood risk management is right in the rainy season. And I wondered whether actually we ought to bring it forward to September and do those meetings the other way around, because it would be quite a good idea to look at how secure we are heading into the rainy season.
I had already thought about that, that's why I put it in November, it certainly can't be any later than that.
No, earlier to
Yeah,
swap.
but the issue then is, if we're going to debate the River Wise all at the same time, then, because we've still got the unfinished business of actually discussing the TORs are going to be agreed. by then.
Sorry, I
So we
don't
might not have
understand.
detailed agreement to say in September. And also, on the TNF itself as well, we were going to debate in September as well. So it is a matter of capacity. I'm just asking whether we think we could do the flood in that as well.
I don't really understand. So what you're saying is we're going to take today's conversation to our September meeting. That's what you're saying, and then
We're going to have to
yeah.
add it until
Yeah.
September meeting
Okay.
because we couldn't.
Sorry,
discuss it today.
big of it then.
It's whether we do the local plan and that particular topic, or flooding and that
Well, I
particular
think the
topic, it's a
flood
matter
fits
of
with the-
capacity, I'm asking the committee.
Flood bits with the river story.
And I was a bit confused with the response that came from Councillor
Yeah, I know.
Harvey, because I think, Councillor Harvey, were you referring to the decision on the terms of reference for the commission, or are you referring to what is the present item of the agenda for September, which is what I think you're referring to, which is the Herefordshire local plan?
Sorry, I thought it was you were referring back to the commission with respect to the
I
local
thought
plan.
Yeah, no, he was referring to the Herefordshire local plan and whether having it, discussing that in September, that would be okay with regards to your deadlines and plans regarding the plan.
I think we will probably have the three major rounds of public consultation that have gone on analysed at that point, and it may be worth the committee taking a look at the aggregated picture across those consultations, but it will only be at the very front end of the policy drafting activity. But if the committee thinks it's useful to take a look at where we're at after the three major consultations, then September or October would be a useful time to do that. But I don't think it's so sensitive that a month either way would make much difference.
It would be September or quite late in November. Would that still be okay, Councillor Harvey? We're just really thinking whether to put it in the September meeting or the November meeting, and obviously
I'd go for September then.
Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to say was that the TORs, I'm quite sure, will be looked at in draft and sent around. So I'm hopeful that it will be a relatively short, which would also go quite well with the planning, where we will in fact be looking at the rounds of consultation. So a manageable size thing to look at.
Although we will still have the TNF to bottom out.
Yes, but we will have already done some kicking that around.
Where do you think the capacity is there?
So are we secure with our, secure with our flood risk management strategy? Sorry, I jumped in, but it's do you want to say something? You say something first. Go for it.
Yeah, no, I was just going to ask, is the flood risk management strategy, is that the strategy that's actually coming forward and we're looking at because it's being published at that date, or are we just looking at it?
No,
Because
we're
we're
looking
looking
at it, but it hasn't been reviewed since 2017.
Right, okay, so I think, I'm thinking in terms of timeliness of these scrutinies, I would incline towards keeping the local plan in September in a response to consultation. I think that's the right thing to do. If we're busy bees up to that point and we get the TR sorted out and we do need to get a beat on the task and finish, or we won't have a hope.
No.
So we need to kind of know what the TRs are going to be and then trigger the task and finish, because that also is a timeliness issue. and then look at the flood risk management strategy in November. And I would also propose that we take a slightly broader approach there, because obviously flooding is one of the responses to climate change, but the others, as we are in the middle of a drought and fire. So we have got more than one thing that we need to have a strategic approach to. And so I would suggest that even if there are subsidiary items within that scrutiny, we do also look at drought and fire.
Yes, I'm quite happy with that, because being a member of the fire authority, I know we plan to deal with a major blaze in North Worcestershire.
And also, I think we should have the fire and rescue service in as witnesses anyway, even if we were just talking about flooding.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Councillor Gandhi?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit confused regarding the decision about it being difficult to put the two items together, because I would have thought if we've already agreed the membership of we're either going to have a TNF or we're not going to have a TNF. Now there might be a discussion on that, but that might be a discussion that's held before September, because the commission is going to be set up fairly soon, and so therefore we will know what their terms of reference are going to be, and whether we feel a TNF is necessary. If we believe it is, you've already got your membership, and there is no reason why you can't bring to the next meeting a scoping document, which has already been circulated to members for comment. So all you're really doing is actually approving a scoping document which has already been agreed. Because we're not going to be debating the problem, because that's what the TNF are going to be doing.
As chair, I'm only thinking of you members, and I'm just making sure that we have the capacity to do the work and don't end up, as in happened, general scrutiny quite often going into the afternoon.
But I don't want to spend all day discussing a scoping document for a TNF.
No?
Well, if the scrutiny officer's got that noted in their hearts, once we have a decision from cabinet, or once the leader has brought out the TORs, and we can have a look at them as well. Then what we will do in September is look to decide in once and for all whether we have a TNF group study, and if we do, what the scope of that study will be. And we won't need to have a debate on that. Fine.
No.
Agreed. So we will need to amend the September entry, which is still on the local plan, but to include a line now on looking at whether we have a TNF group study on the River Wye and the scope of that for approval in September. I'm assuming that unless those members
Can't it just be to look at the scoping document of of whatever? Because surely the decision as to whether you're going to have a TNF and whatever will be made between the members long before we get to the September meeting. So you won't have to, you're not going to debate at the meeting.
It's just a scoping.
It's just a scoping document which could be put together between yourselves and officers and circulated to us.
Okay.
I just made the comment that obviously the decision whether or not to undertake a task finish group should be in the light of the best way to approach a topic.
Yeah.
So you might want to consider that before you consider whether or not this is to bring a scope. So, you could just include restoration of the River Wye on the work program, and then you can think whatever you wish to change it.
Okay.
But
I'm just thinking about the length of the agenda then.
That's fine.
yes, so I concur exactly with that. I'm just thinking in terms of keeping the options open.
Councillor Marsh?
Yes, could I suggest that the current wording for the local plan is perhaps may not fit the best fit with what will actually be available, which will be the 3 rounds of consultation. So I suggest that we may update the wording on that. And also that we add the fire authority, as Councillor Swindleworth suggests, to the external witnesses for the flood one.
Okay. But when you suggest we need to update the agenda item in September, are you going to suggest a draft?
Well, I mean, it could say to consider the analysis of the 3 public consultations considered. I'm not at all sure at that point, these 2 questions that we put will actually be something we can really look at, but I'm not a planner. So
The issue is that both of those questions
they are
are almost certainly would have been responded to by the parish councils who have been identified. I certainly know in my ward, the parish councils who have been identified have already answered those 2 questions and returned them. So that's what that will form part of our discussion. So we won't want to discuss whether it's a good idea or not, because those are the options that have already been gone out to parish councils.
So what we're saying is it should be to consider the outcome of the 3 consultations on the Herefordshire local plan. The outcome of
Consider the
three-
analysis, actually. Consider not the outcomes, because
Analysis.
The
the
analysis.
analysis.
The analysis. Yeah. Getting too ambitious again, aren't I?
I know, I'd like to put an outcome in there, but.
So we're looking at the consultation, the response and analysis. So we might actually be looking at the mechanism as well, in case there's responses that cover that, and we can learn from that, which I think would be really, well, thank you.
So the mechanism as well by which the consultation was done. As to the 2 questions on the agenda, do you want them left on? No, you want to take them off?
Yeah.
2 questions left on. Well, it makes for a shorter agenda, and I always pleased with that.
Well, I think it brings focus.
Yeah.
So and they're definitely the questions, certainly for those sorts of rural wards that go to the heart of the matter.
So at a pre-meeting, we would then look at lines of questioning under that topic, which could include these. Yes. Okay, I'm just checking this scrutiny officer. Have you captured it? No.
I think so.
You want to read it out? Yeah.
So, on behalf of the chair, it's moved that the Environment Sustainability Scrutiny Committee Annual Work Plan 2002-2023 be agreed subject to the inclusion of the restoration of the River Wye on the 21st September of 2022, and the invitation of Fire and Rescue Authority to attend the consideration. Jump down there. After River Wye 2021-2022, and the amendment of the consideration of the Herefordshire local plan to consider the analysis of the outcomes of the public consultation on the local plan and the mechanism by which the consultation was undertaken, deleting the other references in the group.
I don't think you need of the outcomes.
Just the analysis.
Consider the analysis of the public consultation on the local plan and the mechanism by which the consultation was undertaken, and the invitation of the Fire and Rescue Authority on Wednesday, 16th November 2022, for the consideration of Herefordshire local flood risk management strategy.
Councillor School has something.
Thank you. Yeah, no, good with all that. I just want to touch on the January item waste and recycling, and I would really like it front and centre. Reduce, reuse, recycle. I would love to see something about reuse.
Yeah, we could put it reuse, reduce, recycle.
If that's possible. That we have reuse centres as they do in Abergavenny, like Boyce, alongside the household recycling centre, that we encourage reuse at every opportunity with repair cafes and so forth, that we look to the Hereford community reuse group, which are brilliant what they do, etc. So there are multiple opportunities And I feel like we're kind of leapfrogging them in order to get to recycling. We really need to put a lot more effort and focus into reuse. Thank you.
And the total shop sector is always forgotten and is the most enormous contribution to reuse. So may I suggest that- yes, so can we make sure that possibly someone from that sector could come and talk to us, because they are a very positive force for good in numerous ways, and they most certainly are fabulous reusers.
So I think Stella would mention.
Well, maybe Andrew Wood. Maybe we could ask Andrew Wood to come along, the Hereford Reuse and Recycling Community Group. And they do an amazing amount of work. They're utterly fabulous.
Or the
Can we
hospice.
also
The
make a-
hospice are also very
Well,
well
also
distributed.
the
across
British Heart
country.
Foundation, because they'll take stuff from you, and if they sell it, they will then notify you how much they've managed to. So when my mother died, for example, stuff that was worthwhile, furniture worthwhile, they took away and then sent us a letter telling us how much we'd contributed to the British Heart Foundation for the sale of her stuff, and that is really nice, I think.
Can I also suggest that at that meeting that we have some people who work on the ground at the waste recycling centres at the moment who tell us why we're getting consistent messages of the public that don't leave that in the charity donation box because they won't take it. Now, I've had that repeated at least 3 times at recycling centres because there are clear impediments to them taking it, not because they're being awkward, but it would just be really helpful for them to have their voice and to say the reason we have to do this is X, Y, and Z, and then we can go, right, we'll fix X, Y, and Z. Yeah.
Storage.
Well, yeah, but we need their voice in there, please.
This is looking towards the new contract. There are many things about the current contract that dead and gone. So it will need to be looking forward, because this contract now has, given it's a 25-year contract, a very short time left to run. I'm not entirely sure that, but.
Well, I think the problems with where we are or have experience indicate directly where we should be going. So that's the only reason for doing it, not saying, it's saying if we're going to fix something, don't fix what's not broken, but have a look at what's not broken and know then, okay, we need to fix it in this way. So that's my reason for asking for it.
I agree with everything that's been said. I'm looking here at what the sort of specific issues that you're wanting to look at. And I'm looking at point B, which is our waste disposal strategy, et cetera, going to meet our targets to reduce waste to landfill to 1%? How are we going to, who and how is we going to answer that question?
Well, it's a target by the council.
It might be a target, but how can you at a meeting in January, how can you tell us, how can anybody tell us that what we're doing with regards to our strategy how can it ensure us that we're going to meet our target of 1%? I think the wording of that is a bit weird.
That's a question. It's the contractual term. We have a contract.
Would it be possible for, would it be possible, Rachel, just to let us know what documents will be available at that point in January, all being well?
Yeah, absolutely we can. We have already agreed with the contractor that this year they will deliver a 95% reduction from 20% down to 1% to landfill. So we will have we'll have nearly a year's worth of monitoring data at that stage on how that's progressing, not without challenge, because some of it is due to downtime at the different facilities. But you will have monitoring data on the fact that we're delivering 1% now already. I think we would welcome a discussion on reuse. We would welcome a discussion on the role of the voluntary sector in reuse, and a discussion on how the service can help and support and how we can work together better with the sector. We would certainly welcome that discussion when that comes up in your work programme.
Well, thank you for confirmation of that, Rachel. Councillor Swinhouse?
Thank you, Chair. It might also be worthwhile being cited on the waste task and finish, which I served on, where the reuse issue was brought up again and again and again, like a broken record, because that's the kind of person I am. So it's, but, you know, I'll bring it up again because that's the person I am. And as far as I understand it, it's the contractual changes, because we have Hartlebury, we have the energy from waste plant, which I don't know if you've been and seen it. If you haven't, go, it's awesome. But basically the capacity of that is significant, and therefore it's a matter of changing the contract to say you can't have 20%, you can now have 0% or 1%, whatever, that doesn't go through that, because we have that as a facility, the service.
Are you wanting that, you touched upon in the actual agenda item on the work?
No, I was just trying to bring clarity for Councillor Gandhi over the discussion about how do we get to 1%. We get to 1% by putting more through the
Are you happy, Councillor Gandhi, with that? Yeah. Okay. And it's a good challenge. It was a good challenge. It was.
Yeah, sorry, can I just go back to the Herefordshire Local Flood Risk Management Strategy for November, and I'm just wondering, because my ward got flooded in December, February 2020, but I was wondering whether we could look at something like communication with parish councils, because, you know, would communications be involved with one of the 2 points, like what the council and its statutory partners are doing to manage flood risk in the county, and is there a resilience plan in place? Something that I see is missing. We say it in the flood risk management strategy, but yeah, my parish council haven't been consulted.
No, not mine.
And I just think we need to, can we put something in about communication, or can we scrutinise the communication and involvement of parish councils that are in flooded areas?
Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
The review of this is due in 2023. It's every 6 years. So we can certainly put a stake in the ground.
Yeah.
When we discuss this agenda item, that parish councillors should be actually involved in that actual review. So it's quite a timely point at which to actually say that before the next review is due in 2023.
Well, I just see, you know, with the Lengthsman contract and the water course consent forms, and I feel a bit out of my depth in terms of, because I'm new to scrutiny, but how can we put that within that so that we don't lose that point? Yeah. You know, that's what I'm asking.
Well, we will put it.
Okay, thanks.
As a line of calculation. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Swinhouse.
Thank you. So, well, we're putting stakes in the ground. It's a good point. Natural flood management, definitely. I would like to have something about that. And land use. Yes. And sort of triangulation around what other things are going on in that sphere, because actually it's the upstreaming of the problem that is a really important element. So if we're only ever looking at what we do with the bucket at the flooding end, whether we're missing out on the opportunities upstream with natural flood management, change to land use, and that's what I would call strategic.
Yes. Yeah. Did you get that?
Yes.
So I think I'm triangulating here, but what I'd like to have is an evidence-based report from Balfour Beatty about their small water body management. Because the small water bodies actually create a lot of resilience if they're managed in a good way in the county. But And also for biodiversity, it's incredibly important because that's where our amphibians mostly exist. So I would really like to see a comprehensive report from Balfour Beatty. And I'd like to know, you know, sort of like, not just as of now, but what's been done previously and what we could do better in terms of managing our small water bodies.
Do you want to see that?
So I would suggest that one way forward would be we make the agreed changes that we've got, and some of the details that we're now talking about are about planning for the reports, for the meetings, so we're getting into key lines of inquiry.
Yeah.
So what members might find useful is to agree the work programme subject to those changes we've already identified, big changes we identified.
Okay.
And then consider informally the key lines of inquiry we want to raise at the meetings and the report requests subsequently. So separating those two things out a bit, so that, because there are lots of other considerations we might even think of here. So that's what I'd suggest. So if we could agree the work programme subject to the main amendments that we made, and then we've noted some of the points which are key lines of inquiry to inform the reports and the approach in committee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Watson?
Yeah, and I'm just going to throw something else into the ring as a line of inquiry. It's around actually hetero management. Because yeah, I know, sorry, Councillor Marsh. But I think that heteros are really important in terms of like land use, but also for flood risk management and resilience. And I just would like, because we've got the tree strategy coming along, and I just think how we bottom out, because I was horrified to find out that despite a hetero being removed in my local parish, it isn't actually under planning enforcement, it comes under ecology. And so therefore, it sits out a remit that will never be enforced. So why do we have the heteros regulation when we can't enforce it? And so therefore, I'm hoping that we can put these, you know, heteros as part of like, you know, flood risk resilience. Thanks.
Councillor Marsh?
Yeah, I think just need to say that the update of the flood risk management strategy will be an extremely large piece of work over about 18 months by many officers. You know, we are not going to write it in 2 hours. So the key thing is that we look at some of the new headings that we would like to be included in that piece of work, but we're not going to get the piece of work in the 2 hours. We'll be looking at headlines and direction. We can certainly ask Balfour Beatty what information they have on the small water courses, and we can certainly say we want that to feed in, but we ourselves cannot, you know, cannot be the funnel through which the entire thing passes.
Can I just respond to that? Because one of my understanding was that when you are as a committee saying, so what do we want to see in here? One of the things that we have to give good notice of is what we want to see in here. And in my own ward, there was a huge local authority expense in clearing up a hill after a hedge had been taken out and the road sat below the hedge, and all the soil from that field, all the soil, that's ridiculous, but it was a huge amount, it was just like a ski park down the hill because the soil had been washed off because the hedge had been taken away. That's a huge local authority expense. So my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we have to go, what are the problems that we've encountered as people in where we live and in our ward? And so how can we say, actually, I'd like to know about this in good time so that officers can deliver it. And you know, otherwise we're just responding to what we're given, then saying, oh, but you haven't put that in, and then it goes ding dong, back and forth, so.
I'm fairly sure that there won't be a new draft. We're feeding in at an early stage.
Yeah.
So we are, you know, expanding, as has been said by several members, the whole picture has changed in the 6 years. So we'll be looking at the markers, including hedges that need to feed in. I'm just saying that this one is a broad piece of work rather than a focused bit of work because it's so big. And there will be streams of work that should come out of it that we hope will make the next flood, drought and fire strategy a great deal more fit for the place we unfortunately find ourselves in.
I mean, these are all key lines of inquiry. I don't disagree. And it's things that we will want to pick up. This is the work plan. It's a broad, high-level work plan. It doesn't stop us or preclude us from raising anything we want to do within that particular topic. The key thing for us today, have we got the right topics for the rest of this year to March? And given your enthusiastic response to discussing them, I assume we probably have. No, Councillor Watson.
It's Councillor
Milne.
Okay,
Councillor Milne.
Thank you, Louis. You asked a minute ago, have we got the right topics in the work plan? And I suspect that as only Councillor Harvey and I are online, she may be the only person who's picked up in the chat. I made a comment in the chat around the suggestion that we have an item on historic environment. And I say this because the work plan is very much balanced in favour of the natural environment. So items 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8 are all very much natural environment. But the built environment isn't excluded since it's implied in item 1, the core strategy, and in item 3 for transport. At the moment, historic environment is with the connected communities scrutiny, and it's pigeonholed under tourism. And quite why we view the conservation of the historic environment as an artifact of tourism, I'm not quite sure, but it is just simply, I think, a way in which the county plan has been structured, and it's been communicated through into this draft work plan. But it makes no sense to me whatsoever, and it would be much more logical to bring the historic environment over to the remit for sustainability and environment scrutiny, in my opinion. So I just wonder whether members would like to chew on that for a minute.
Yeah, I think that might be one for the Scrutiny Management Board. Yeah. I think you would have to, if you can raise that issue, Jeremy. With
I raised it at the work plan session on the 22nd of June, but I don't think it was picked up. In fact, I raised it a number of times, but I don't think it's ever been picked up. So perhaps that's one for you as chair to, if members think that that's a sensible move, to talk to the community, to the Scrutiny Management Board about.
Jeremy, could you send us your rationale and we could consider it?
Yes, I'd be pleased to.
Just send it out, committee members. Yes, some of us are on the Scrutiny Management Board, so we could raise that. That is with connected communities at the moment. So we just need to have that considered in the script.
Yes, I mean we wouldn't be considering a hedgerow, the conservation of a hedgerow as a benefit simply because it improves our tourism offer. We do it because it's environmentally and ecologically the right thing to do, and really the same should apply with the historic environment. We do it because it's part of our overall cultural responsibility. So that in a nutshell is the rationale.
John?
I was just going to say, I think this is more a constitutional matter. So I'll take that away and find out what the governance is around that.
If you want to do that for us, that's good. Can I just ask about Harman, because we've had a lot of amendments suggested on the work plan. I'm just wondering about Harman today. Susan, the officer.
So, Chair, as I suggested previously, if members are minded to agree the work programme subject to the main amendments that we discussed earlier, that we defined earlier, and note the key lines of inquiry which have come out of the discussion. We can then draw those up for further consideration later on. But as the chair pointed out, the work programme is really the strategic sort of higher level, just to make sure we've got the right topics which are scoped correctly at the right time with the right people.
Okay.
But the key lines of inquiry we should come back to, so we're planning ahead for the reports and the meeting, key questions in committee.
So are we going to agree the work plan today with these amendments? And do we have to go through it? Or do you want to circulate them?
So Chair, I read out earlier. Do you want me to go through that again? So I read out earlier to agree the work programme and substantive amendments. So they are noted. And what I'm suggesting is that other less substantive amendments are noted and drawn up as the key lines.
But the committee hasn't seen the work programme as amended in these substantive amendments. You read them out? Okay, you're happy to vote on it?
And I believe that it's a standing item, isn't it, to have a look at the end of each meeting at the key lines for the next one. So it's, you know, it's not a once-off.
Yeah, but we'll still have the work plan as amended circulated, just in case there's something that hasn't been picked up in this discussion. Because your enthusiasm was great, but you certainly had a lot of amendments across. That's good. So can I have a proposal for the work plan as amended? Councillor Swinburne, Secretary, Councillor Hewitt. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. And I think that is the end of the agenda. So thank you very much on behalf of this new chair of this new committee for attending. And I hope we have a
The next meeting.
well, we've already discussed that.
I know that you just read it, it's the coda. It's the
we have to read it.
So we know it's finished.
We already discussed it. All right, I will read it out. The next meeting of the Environment and Sustainability Scrutiny Committee will be on the 18th of September.
The 23rd on the agenda.
31st of September, so remind us.
When?
31st of September.
Wednesday.
Well, Chair, thank you very much.
Is that another Tuesday?
Yes, there it
And don't you have to do the script about it? Turning up Tuesday.
Wednesday, 21st of Wednesday.
Oh, yes. Have we had a live?